Hi, I'm Tim Zacharias with Cougar USA and your host of Building Value. My guest on this episode is going to be Scott Magee, Vice President and co-founder of Cougar USA. It's been about 4 years since Scott was on the podcast last, and we're going to talk about kind of what has changed since then till now and what's got us excited for 2025. So we're going to be diving into steam systems, going to be looking at Fulton boilers and steam generation, as well as just general steam design and some things that can kind of get you in trouble, things to look out for, and picking his brain a little bit about projects that he's been on and tips and tricks that can help you along the way. On Building Value, we highlight the people, products, and solutions making a lasting impact on our community. Join us as we share insights and stories from the people that make buildings work. All right, so Scotty, you remember the last time you were on the podcast? It was February of 21, so we're going back 4 years.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about was what you were excited about for 2021. And I don't know if you remember, but talked about that we actually had a sales team. We actually had a team of service techs. So you weren't turning tools. I think our customers have been the most happy about,
yes,
about that.
Everybody's
piece.
been happy about that.
Some new products, FTC, it's a new product. And then we were up to 28 employees. So I think some of those numbers have doubled since then. So I'm curious, kind of, looking back, what do you feel like has changed over the last 4 years? And then what has got you excited for 2025?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that has me excited is the team that we've put together, because we have a lot of young talent. I didn't think that I would ever be the old guy, and now I'm the old guy. But I'm really excited that most of the sales team and the project managers are all under 30, right? And so we have a lot of new talent that we brought into the industry, which a lot of companies, to me, kind of retread old sales guys like me. But just the young talent that we brought on staff, how quick they're picking it up, how aggressive they are. On top of that, we've hired a lot of women, which is impressive. I think half the office is women. And I feel like ever since that happened, we're more organized. So they definitely keep us in line. But that's what I'm really excited about our team. They got some years under their belt. They're all very independent. We're a lot more proactive than we were 4 years ago. I mean, we call on all three levels. I won't give all that away because in case the competition's watching this.
You said the same thing back in
sauce.
21.
But and then the product lines. We've picked up some really unique products that are starting to come to fruition, and the company just keeps growing. It's insane.
Yep.
So I don't know how you manage it all, but kudos to you.
Yeah, like you said, we have a great team, so it makes it a lot easier. I think one thing else that was different is I think we both had less gray hair in our beards.
Yes.
4 years ago.
Yes.
But that's okay. So you mentioned FTC back in 21, and we were just kind of rolling with those guys. Definitely a lot has changed since then. What do you feel like has been positive with the FTC tanks?
Well, I give a shout out to Michael Balboni. He's really hit the ground running with that. He gives me a hard time. He says I inflate the numbers, but I think we are at the numbers that I promised we would be at. We've done phenomenally well with that product. We have the competition scrambling. It's even carried us into the fire side, and we've been selling tanks on the fire side. So it's just kind of opened up a whole nother avenue of customers for us. But that's been a great product. Joe has a great team that builds the tanks. I mean, I'll stand by my statement I made 4 years ago that steel tanks would be out of business, and I think we're headed in that direction.
Yeah, it's definitely proved itself in terms of the technology and the applications that we can use it in the commercial market, and just continues to grow.
Yeah, and the durability that it's going to last 40 years minimum.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can go on and on about that, but
yeah, and we've definitely continued to add new products, between 21 and now, and people and everything else. So, what kind of looking at all of that? Anything else that's got you excited for 2025?
Yeah, Fulton. We forever didn't have a boiler line, and it was always funny. Other reps had 3, 4, 5 boiler lines, and I don't know how they kept all the manufacturers happy. But when we started looking for boilers, we weren't going to be a boiler house where we had 4 or 5. We wanted the best, and we felt Fulton was the best. And so when they decided to jump on board, I was ecstatic. Terry and Kyle, with the local presence, those 2 guys have been great. We've been up to the factory. It's fantastic. It's a great product, and we've hit the ground running. What I didn't realize would take off as fast as it has is we were always known for steam, right? Mm-hmm. So we were always after the boiler. And because we've been involved in those jobs, and also we pick up a premium product like Fulton that does packaged steam boilers, it's just been kind of an easy transition. And to be honest, you can't VE a steam boiler. Yeah. So, it's really done well for us, and it's a great product. It took what used to be a small order and made it a very large order.
Yep.
And which is great by me because we were always out there working on that stuff anyway.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, we've been doing steam for a long time. I mean, I think my dad's been kind of entrenched in the med center.
I think he invented steam.
Yeah. Yes, he may make that claim. And like you said, to have that expertise, everything downstream of the boiler, and now be able to provide the entire system has been a nice, complementary add for us. So I think that was one of the things that was nice, because initially when we were looking at the boilers, we were looking for that kind of condensing boiler, that hydronic boiler, and now to be able to do both sides, hydronic condensing boilers, which we talked about last month, and now into the steam boilers, both with Fulton, has been great. So local presence, again, is awesome. Those guys have a big focus on industrial, so kind of work right alongside of them to be able to service that kind of healthcare, food service, anything else like that kind of touches our customers. So, maybe talk a little bit about your experience so far with Fulton on the steam side, and just kind of where we can apply those steam boilers.
Well, Fulton's kind of made it easy on us on the steam boilers. We give them the information, and they come back with detailed drawings, specs, wiring diagrams, and everything. But really, the secret sauce here has been Muhammad. It's refreshing to see a young guy. He's, 24?
He's a little bit older than that.
A little bit older than that? Okay. Well, you guys have the great hair. It throws me off a little bit.
Yeah.
But, he's hit the ground running. He's excited. He's getting in front of engineers and owners, and he's just a bulldog. And he's a natural born salesman. I mean, he does a great job with it. So it's kind of exciting, honestly, to see a young sales guy really take the lead. And so I've kind of just stepped out of the way and to support him, and really haven't had to support him, to be honest. So he's made my life really easy when it comes to Fulton boilers. And I have the connections with the contractors and been doing work on their projects for 30 years now. So it's just a great combination. And I don't know how to explain it real well, but it's nice when you don't have to do everything anymore. And I don't have to do, I can depend on these guys to do what they need to do to get the job done. And so it lets me focus on other things. So it's been really nice.
Nice.
So shout out to Muhammad again.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the steam systems, just kind of big picture, what would a typical steam system look like for a hospital? Let's say they want to be able to generate steam to use it out in the building, either for heating or domestic hot water, sterilization, whatever it is. What are kind of those main components that they would need to generate steam?
Well, first of all, you need to come to one of our steam training classes that we give about 6 to 9 times a year. But yeah. All kidding aside, you generate the steam and then you distribute it through the hospital. Right. And so typically you have to generate it at a higher steam pressure, and then you have to knock it down for process, and then you got to knock it down for heating loads. So we take everything off the boiler. We go through the PRV stations. We'll trap the whole system. We'll even take it to clean steam generators if they want clean steam for humidification and sterilization. We do the building heat exchangers. We can do packages, which is really nice, and that's starting to take off as well. Steam-fired water heaters. Then you have condensate return units. You have to return everything. We have filter stations for the sterilizers. So, honestly, we're a one-stop shop when it comes to steam and steam specialties. We can offer everything. We even trim out the boilers with drip pin elbows and exhaust heads, or as your dad likes, flex connectors. Drip pin elbows is a dirty word to him. Yeah. But, there's
like
nothing.
triple duty valves.
Yeah, there's nothing on the steam side we can't do. Shell and tube heat exchangers. I mean, you name it. We got them covered, and that's nice because, to be honest, I don't like selling parts and pieces of a steam system. It has to be complete, right? You have to take it from start to finish, and return it, and everything has to work for a steam system to work properly. So it's just nice now, when I go on a job site, it's all our equipment. We're starting it all up. I'm not starting other people's equipment because they were low on bid day but have no idea what they sold. So that's been a really nice transition. But not only do we offer the equipment, we offer the expertise. I mean, your dad was known as a steam guy for years. By default, I've become the steam guy. But the reason for that is that we take it from start to finish. So we work with the engineers, we help lay it out, we help size equipment, keep them out of trouble. Even if they design it without our help and we see something not right, we'll go back in and say, hey, you need to take a look at this, your loads may be off, or the turn down here is going to kill you. But then once we sell it to the contractor, to the project manager, it goes over to detailing. And what I've learned over the years is if you take the time to sit down and draw that job out with the contractor, we don't have any problems on the backside. And the contractors have seen the value in that. And so it's funny, I spend just as much time with the project managers as I do as the guys that detail out the jobs, and they love it. And it's great because I know that drawing is going to be right, and we're not going to go out there for startup and I'm going to go, uh-oh, this isn't right, guys.
Yep.
And so, just completing that package from the owner to the engineer to the detailers to the contractors to the field guys. Yep. I mean, I'm leaving here going down to St. Luke's to look at some steam there they have some questions on. So, I mean, as far as steam, I mean, we're the complete package there.
Yeah. So, and 100% agree with what you're saying, especially that work down the line with the detailers to be able to get that piping right so that you're not doing rework, things like that before startup. So, and for a long time, like you said, we worked on everything downstream of the boiler. Kind of, when we look at the boiler plant specifically, what are those kind of major components and maybe some things to look out for?
Well, I mean, you have the steam boiler, you have the DA, you have the boiler feed, you may need chemical injection. You just got to look at the whole system, right? You can't just look at the boiler. You got to make sure that it fits the application, and if there are anything that you need special, not that any of it's special. I think a boiler system is pretty self-explanatory. Of course, I've been doing it a while, so I know people get mad when I say that, but it's pretty straightforward. But basically, it's looking at the complete system and making sure you got all your loose ends tied up.
Yeah. So what would be maybe something that you feel like gets overlooked, or when you look at steam and maybe things get oversized for capacities, like what kind of issues do you run into there?
On the steam side?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we run into a lot of issues. In the class that we give, I tell engineers and contractors, hey, throw everything out about chilled water and hot water, because you don't want to size a steam system with a lot of safety factors in it. You don't want to oversize it because really you're operating on the low end most of the time, and if you don't have the turn down in the valves and the valves are oversized, then it gets real sloppy and you're not going to control it, and you can lose a steam system real fast when relief valves start popping. That's when everybody panics, right, and the calls come in. But you got to size it tight. You got to look at the turn down. You got to look at the placement of your traps. You got to look at the size of your traps, the type of your trap you're installing to make sure it's right for the application. We see the same things over and over again when we meet with people. They elevate condensate off modulating control valves. That's a huge one. And then I preach this in the class too. There's a lot of people that sell heat exchangers, that sell steam-fired water heaters, that sell sterilization equipment, right? They know their equipment, but they don't understand all the components that go into it, how to bring steam to it, how to get it out. And they give a lot of bad advice. I'm not going to give a ton of examples, but I always warn people, call me. Don't call the Steris guy or the water heater guy. They know how their water heater works, but after that they don't. And so that's a big issue in our industry. People don't understand systems, right? They sell products and they're like, make it work, or they pass the buck, right? I mean, there's a lot of finger pointing in our industry. At the end of the day, we all want it to work, whether it's the engineer, the contractor, or the vendor. that's what I see, in and I think what makes us really special there is we take responsibility for that. I mean, you've gone out, we've seen jobs where we're like, oh my God, how did this happen? And everybody points fingers, right? But that's where we have that extra touch where we go to the job site to try to avoid those issues. And the guys that we work with every day understand that. There's some guys that still kind of will be on their own, but we'll get to them all eventually, maybe. But it's just paying attention to the details, right?
Yeah.
They get you in trouble. Little things like vacuum breakers, right? I mean, they got to be on the job. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah, a couple of times.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm looking at some of the things or thinking about some of the things that you mentioned, just to highlight. So, when we're talking about the capacities, right, or the sizing of the PRV stations, when you look at those things and you say, okay, well, we don't want to put safety factors in there because it's a detriment to the control, right? So like as an example, if you had went in with like a 2 or 3 inch control valve and we're trying to control a very low end load, the issue there, you mentioned the turn down, is they can't control at that very low flow.
Yeah, so they lose
right?
control and they overshoot, and the system just it just beats itself up.
Yeah, and so right sizing those PRV stations or control valves specifically for their load is super important.
And looking at the pipe sizing, right? Make sure
Yeah.
you step the pipe sizing down right. Make sure you got concentric, eccentric reducers, all those little things add up. Make sure the sensing lines are sloped properly. You got to look at noise, right? You got to stay below 85 decibels or the room will get noisy. All those things come into play. And then the other thing that comes into play, TECO spec is really pretty tough, and it's different than what I believe that they need, but it's TECO, they get what they want. So you got to know that. And that gets people in a lot of trouble because they'll quote standard equipment. I'm like, guys, this is TECO. They're not ever going to take that.
Right.
Even if it's not in the drawings or the specs. So little things like that can catch you.
I know we've talked about, I think we may have even talked about it last time, the lifting condensate, but I know it's something that we talk on about in the classes a lot. Some of our tech talks, we talk about steam being a two-phase flow, right? So you're going to have
Steam's born to die.
Right. So you're going to have some condensate just in the distribution, but also after any sort of heat exchange where you're using the steam to generate heat somewhere else, right? So that's kind of the main part that you're talking about. If we're using through a heat exchanger with a modulating control valve that can totally shut off the steam supply to the, and
yeah,
now
what the
you're left
equipment
with,
is looking at your outlet temperature, right? And so once it's satisfied, that valve's going to close. And steam doesn't flow like water, right? So you're going to create a vacuum. You can actually pull condensate back up into your equipment. And anybody that's heard hammering at their facility, they know exactly what I'm talking about. It'll wake you up. So those can get you in a lot of trouble. Then that little $100 vacuum breaker is a lifesaver. I don't know how many jobs I go to and it's valved out, right? And I'm like, just put a vacuum breaker in there. I used to laugh. I used to, when early in my career, I'd ride it with your dad all the time, and I referred to him as like the mafia, right? Everybody can't figure this out. They all think it's this major problem. Your dad walks in and goes, put a vacuum breaker in, send me a PO for $200, I'll see you in a week. And everybody's like, he's a genius. And but it's those little things that you pick up on over the years that keep people out of trouble. So
yeah, it's that I think the other part of that has been when, especially like when we talk about DHT and the semi-instantaneous steam-fired water heaters being elevated so you can gravity drain that condensate away. I mean, I know we've had instances where those have not been elevated. You just
brought up another. I just, as we have talking, all these things are coming in my head now. Like on the steam-fired water heaters, you not only have to coordinate with the plumbing contractor, you got to coordinate with the mechanical contractor.
Yep.
And a lot of times they don't talk on a job, and so what a lot of people don't know, even when we don't sell the heater, I always make the plumbing guy coordinate with the mechanical guy for that reason, because they always lift condensate off. It gets them in trouble, right? So you have to have the trades talking. A lot of times it's two different contractors, right?
Yep.
So you got to get ahead of the game. And then you're talking about things that get you in a lot of trouble. Guys, tying in steam traps at different pressures, right? They don't understand flash tanks. They don't understand recovering it. Vent lines, right? They try to combine vent lines. Nobody looks at the vent line sizing, right? You can undersize those and create a lot of problems. Your vent sizing on your condensate return unit is too small. You'll crack your receiver, leaky seals. I mean, you can create a lot of problems if you put your vent pipe in wrong and it's not sized properly. And you combine atmospheric and pressurized vents. That's a big no-no. I know in the field they go, oh, well, look, I'll save a lot of money. I'll just tie them together and go out. You can't. Your traps, we were talking about earlier, you can't, you got to know the difference between gravity and pumped. You got a pump return, and you have a guy who has a steam trap. He goes, oh, I'll just tie into the pump return right here. That's a huge no-no. I mean, granted, looking at it, it makes sense to them because they could tie in 10 feet away instead of taking it back 30 feet. But as soon as I walk to a job site and I hear banging, I know exactly what they did, and I start looking for those traps. And that's why the job drawings are so critical, so they don't do stuff like that.
Yeah. We've touched on a lot with steam, but I want to kind of wrap up talking about the steam generation again. So if you're looking at Fulton and the steam generation, what's kind of unique about what they can do kind of in the plant?
Well, one of the things that's unique, and we didn't do this on LBJ because the owner chose to go another route, but Fulton, off their standard, not their standard, but their steam-fired boilers, due to the material of construction and the thickness, they can produce like 99% clean steam direct from the boiler. And what that does is it helps you eliminate the clean steam generators, which is an added expense and a lot more piping. I don't know if other people can do that. I haven't looked, but I know that's unique about Fulton and what they bring to the table, because then it's a space saver, right? And it simplifies the amount of equipment you have on a job. I mean, there's a lot of advantages to it.
And where would that clean steam typically go?
To a sterilizer or an autoclave or a cage washer. Yeah, and do you want to know the reason for that? Or,
yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason for that is if you have a sterilizer, what they use a sterilizer for is they clean medical equipment, right? And so if you get any wet steam in there or particles in there, they have these little white packs on the equipment, and if they show spots, they can't use it because it's contaminated. And a lot of people are like, that's not a big deal, but that's a real big deal, because then you cancel a surgery.
Yep.
The hospital isn't happy, the doctor isn't happy, the head nurse isn't happy, and then it goes all the way back to the original design of the design team, where they're like, you have dirty steam, and there's a lot of issues that come into that, and that's where trapping it properly comes into play, and also adding a steam filter,
right?
Which I say, pay me now or pay me later. You're going to put it in eventually, but that's what they typically use a clean steam for, or I call chemical-free steam, right, for humidification, when they don't want to put chemicals into the airstream.
Right.
I think that was the main concern on LBJ was, hey, let's just decouple it, then we don't have to worry about that issue.
Sure.
But you don't have to with a Fulton, which is nice.
Nice. So you mentioned the clean steam for sterilization as being a critical application. What are some of the most critical things you've seen out in the field? Meaning, what are some of the installations that you've worked on that have been super critical, whether it's in a hospital or kind of food process, anything like that? You think of, kind of biggest impact that the steam system's played.
For clean steam generators?
Just in general, steam, what steam system? I know you've worked on a couple in your day.
Just a couple.
Just thinking about different hospitals or universities, other applications. What are some of the steam systems that you've worked on that you felt like played a big role in the building they were in?
Well, all of them. I mean, I'm not really sure how to answer that. I mean, we've done probably every hospital in this town, and every one of them is important that they perform at a high level. And really, they're all the same. It's just on a different magnitude, right? So I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Well, that's all right.
I mean, I like
sprung
it.
that one on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to know that, funny story, we've worked on these hospitals all these years, and now that I hit a certain age, now I'm going into these hospitals. So now I can benefit from, hey, okay, now I see why we do what we do, right? But they're all critical applications. I mean, I think that's the reason we do so well in that field, because they are critical. And that's another component that we have with our service team, is a hospital can't wait for you to come help them. If they call on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning, or New Year's Eve, whatever it may be, you have to respond. They're down.
Sure.
And that's critical. And so we take a lot of pride in having systems that operate very well, right?
Yep.
Then on top of that, we'll sell a STAR program to help the hospital out, right? We go in and educate them as well. So it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about a lot when my youngest son, Joey, was in for surgery. He was 3 months old. And before he was born, they found, a little cyst on his belly. And about 3 months in, they were like, okay, we're ready to do surgery on it. And just kind of thinking about that whole process that you described of the kind of clean steam and sterilization and all of the tools and everything that was used during his surgery, that was one of the first big moments for me where it was kind of like, okay, well, here's the other side of what we're doing, and being able to provide that clean steam so that the sterilizers can provide clean tools for surgery, stuff like that. So that was a cool moment for me to be able to go through that. And then, a couple years ago, I had my appendix out. I remember last thing I remember being rolled into the operating room before the drugs took over and I passed out was, just kind of like trying to take in everything that's going on in the ER or in the OR, and, all of the tools and just all the things going on in there. I mean, like you said, you don't want that whole machine to stop because they don't have the tools to do their job. So definitely a very small part in what they're doing, but, a pretty important one.
Yeah, and something I think your dad and I have done very well over the years is challenging engineers to install this equipment where it's easily accessible, it's easy to work on. You're going to have to change filters out. You're going to have to work on traps, and you can't just shove them up in the ceiling or in the closet, or it's just crazy.
You don't like when the control valve's 15 feet up in the air?
No, and
serving heat exchanger.
And they have a 10-inch bypass with a 10-inch gate valve, and you double that. And so we really challenge engineers and owners to think of different ways of doing things so that it's easy to access the equipment. And I can tell you, being an engineer or an owner is kind of out of sight, out of mind. But if you work with the field guys, you can feel their pain, when they're 15 foot in the air trying to change out a steam valve or wire up a control valve or stroke it or clean it. It's not fun. And, I've been there, so I understand it, and I try to address that on the design phase. And
Sure.
even when it's a design build and the contractor has to do it,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I get why you want to do that, but let's think of the future, right?
Yeah.
This equipment does not last forever. It's a severe service. Your hospital guys are going to have to work on it. I don't like going up to a job and someone going, who's the idiot that designed this? Yeah, we can't work on it. And I'm like, yeah, I'd rather not. So.
Yeah. Well, any other advice for anybody looking at a steam system, looking at a boiler?
Yes.
Anything to consider?
Yes.
Besides calling Cougar?
Yeah, that would be the first thing. But I have two pet peeves in our industry. One is we put bypasses on everything on steam. I have, your dad may get mad at me for saying this, but I have never used a bypass for anything because you have to sit there 24/7 and operate it. So I cringe when I see a PRV station with a 6-inch bypass. At the end of the day, say just put a 2-inch on there. If we need it, we can use it. It's a lot easier to control, right? But I've never used a bypass to start up a system.
Yeah, if you have redundant valves or anything else, a lot of ways to get around.
It's just a leak point. It's just not what I would do. And then another thing, it's been industry standard forever, and I fight it till I get blue in the face, is they like to put bypasses around steam traps. I don't like that idea for a couple of reasons. One, it's another leak point. But if a trap fails, they need to change it out. It needs to be tagged. It needs to be changed out immediately. What happens a lot of times is, a trap fails, a guy isolates it, gets distracted, goes off, forgets about it, right? And then 2 or 3 months later, another trap fails, they isolate it, and before you know it, you've created yourself a major problem. So I don't like bypasses for that reason. Plus, they start open bypasses, they're pressurizing your constant return. That's going to throw everything out of whack. So I hate bypasses for that reason, and I would not put them in my facility.
Yeah, we talk about that on the water PRV stations as well.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to control pressure drop with water with a ball valve or butterfly valve. And, you're then sending high pressure water to fixtures, things like that. It's even more difficult with steam to try to regulate something with a manual valve. So, I think adding redundancy in other ways and kind of proactive maintenance, things like that can can get you the same result of a system that stays operational without having to have the bypasses.
Yes, and I think that's what makes Cougar special, because we look at these things, right? People have put bypasses in just out of habit. They don't even know why they have them in there, right? And they put them on everything. So we challenge the status quo, and we're always looking at better ways to do things and addressing real life field issues, right?
Yeah.
We come across those issues every day, and we try to tell those stories to people who will listen. And some people take it to heart, and some go back to doing what they've always done. But we're winning that battle one person at a time.
Nice. Well, Scott, appreciate you coming back on the show. I know it's been 4 years since your last appearance. Promise it won't be another 4 years before you're back on. But if it is, hopefully we don't have much more gray hair, and I still have my hair in 4 years' time.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me having the gray hair. You know, I get a lot of joy out of working with our team and our younger people. I mean, you know, Logan and these guys that we're recruiting, it's amazing to see their progression and how they grow into the job, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, I never thought I'd be a so-called teacher or trainer, but sure a lot easier to train a bunch of young guys and let them run around town.
Nice. Well, it's been a fun 4 years. Looking forward to what we got going in 2025 and beyond. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I also want to thank everybody for watching and listening to this episode of Building Value, and we hope to see you on the next one.